And I'll just get the thumbs up from Media One. Fantastic. Great. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Shayla Solomon, and it is indeed my distinct pleasure to welcome you to the road naming ceremony for Ambassador Terence A. Todman. We are here today on St. Thomas at the Airport Road, Limburg Bay. And I stand before you with tremendous pride, tremendous pride. Today, we celebrate Ambassador Todman for his life's work and mission of service. There is truly great significance in the renaming of our roadways in honor of the legacy of individuals who serve as staples of our Virgin Islands history. And they agree with me as well. Individuals who represent a foundation of commitment, selfless service, and hope for generations to come. As we celebrate the vast accomplishments and historic career of Ambassador Todman, I encourage you to embrace the greatness that we as Virgin Islanders possess. Small in size, but grand in all that we have to offer. And Ambassador Terence A. Todman was undoubtedly a giant of a man who represented the Virgin Islands all around the world with dignity, honor, and pride. Allow me at this time to recognize our officials and guests. Governor of the U.S. Virgin Islands, the Honorable Albert Bryan Jr., and I normally say this in advance, so my apologies. Please hold your applause until the end. Senior Advisor of the Secretary's Office of Diversity and Inclusion for the U.S. Department of State, Ms. Miriam Saifi. President of the Diplomatic and Consular Affairs Officers Retired, Mr. James Dandridge II. Commissioner of the Department of Public Works, the Honorable Derek A. Gabriel, and all cabinet members present. St. John Administrator, and who's going to just delight us with her beautiful voice today, Mrs. Shakima Jones Sproul, and also present with us today is St. Thomas Administrator, Mr. Avery Lewis. And I would like to recognize all members of the governor's senior staff present here today as well. Bishop Charles Seaton of the Christ Church Methodists, Mr. Terence Todman Jr., son of Ambassador Todman, and I would also like to really recognize his family and friends who are here joining us today. Thank you so much for being present. And former Senator Myron Jackson, thank you for being here today. Now, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, I'm going to ask if you're able to please stand for the national anthem and Virgin Islands March. My apologies, yes. And then included with the family members, we want to certainly recognize the widow of, let's give her a round of applause, Ambassador Terence A. Todman. Thank you for being here with us today. We are going to now have the national anthem and Virgin Islands March sung by our administrator, Mrs. Shakima Jones Sproul, and I ask that you remain standing for the invocation by Bishop Seaton. Thank you.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets regular, the bomb bursting in air, gave proof to the night that our flag flag was still there. Oh, save us, that star-spangled banner yet wave. Oh, the land of the free and the home of the and join today in friendly warmth of work and play. So God bless our Virgin Islands, we're beautiful and tall.
Who have made sterling contributions to the building up of this territory. We are especially grateful to you, God, for this occasion, when we have been able to recognize the worth and contribution of Mr. Todman, the ambassador, and all that he has done to lift the Virgin Islands to greater heights.
There is something so great when a family can give of that member to the entire world, and that's what was done with Ambassador Todman. So we truly appreciate the family, his wife, his son, who are here today, and I know that this is definitely going to be something of public works. The Honorable Derek A. Gabriel.
Good morning. It's a tremendous occasion. We should be happy. Good morning. Good morning, Governor Bryan, other members of the cabinet, administrators Avery Lewis and Administrator Shakima Jones-Sproul, Mr. James Dandridge, President of the Diplomatic and Consular Affairs, retired, Ms. Miriam Safi, Senior Advisor of the Secretary's Office of Diversity, Inclusion and at the U.S. Department of State, former Senators Myron Jackson and James O'Brien, and of course the Todman family and friends. Thank you so much for being here today and welcome. I am extremely proud to welcome you to our road naming ceremony in honor of the late Ambassador Terence Todman. I'm extremely pleased to be here today to offer a warm welcome for a ceremony that has been years in the making. Ambassador Todman was truly the consummate public servant and ambassador, even being awarded the rank of Career Ambassador in 1990. Though he represented the United States throughout his distinguished career, he carried the Virgin Islands in his heart and soul wherever he went. It is because of Ambassador Todman that most Virgin Islanders consider the word ambassador to be synonymous with our territory. Now, in perpetuity, this road will bear his name so that all coming to and leaving St. Thomas will be reminded of his accomplishments and impact on both the United States and Virgin Islands history. Before I go too much further, I want to acknowledge the legislature for their critical role in this process, as it was through a legislative act that this road was named. Unfortunately, due to an unavoidable scheduling conflict, Senate President Donna Fred Gregory and other members of the 34th legislature could not be here today. But I do want to recognize them and thank them for their critical role and offer their best wishes to the Todman family in their absence. I also want to take a moment to thank several people and organizations that were instrumental in making today possible. Of course, Governor Albert Bryan Jr. and Lieutenant Governor Tregenza Roach. Thank you for ensuring this ceremony was done and for identifying the funds for a sign befitting of Ambassador Todman's legacy. We personally spoke about the importance of doing the sign right, and you made sure it was done correctly. Thank you for your continued support, especially financially. As I mentioned, thank you to the legislature for passing Act 7647, the original act naming this road in Ambassador Todman's name, and later Act 7738, which was done to correct certain things in the previous legislation. I want to recognize and thank former senators and friends Sean Michael Malone, the primary sponsor of 7647, and former Senator Myron Jackson, one of the primary sponsors of 7738, for championing those measures on behalf of the people of the territory. Thank you to my colleague and friend, Tanya Marie Singh, the CEO of WTJX TV Channel 12. She was one of the individuals who kept the fire under us to get this done timely, as WTJX recently aired a documentary spotlighting Ambassador Todman's historic contributions and achievements as an African-American ambassador. Thank you for consistently following up to ensure this was done. Special thank you to the Port Authority team led by Executive Director Carlton Dow. He was one of the first people to pledge his support for this endeavor. He and his team have been simply outstanding, and I want to personally thank you for working with us to get this sign done. To the construction team, our district engineer, Mr. Jermaine McLean, and the contractor Apex Construction. Thank you for delivering a monument sign fitting of a legend. Of course, thank you to Director Nathan Simmons and his team over at the PFA as well for their assistance financially. And finally, to the team that put this event together. Of course, to Ms. Eugenie Williams, I can't thank you enough. You're always there working with our team. Our DPW communications and administrative team, community volunteers, and of course, the Todman family. Thank you for not only sharing Ambassador Todman throughout your life, but for also continuing to be there and keep his legacy moving forward. Words cannot express our sincere gratitude and appreciation, and we hope that this sign will continue to honor his legacy for many years to come. Welcome again, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Gabriel, for those wonderful remarks. And now we get an opportunity to hear from the family. And sharing remarks today would be Mr. Terence A. Todman Jr., son of Ambassador Todman.
Good morning. I hope I never forget my mother's stern admonition that all remarks to Virgin Islanders must begin with a friendly greeting. So good morning. Governor Bryant, Commissioner Gabriel, DACOR President Dandridge, State Department Representative Safi, other past, present, and future dignitaries, friends, and family. On behalf of my mother, who blesses us with her presence here today, my sister Pat, whose work is largely responsible for our gathering, although she is not at fault for any unintentional omissions or exclusions. My prematurely departed sister Catherine, who blessed us with 4 wonderful children and their spouses and their children of their own. And my brother Michael, who couldn't be here in person, but sends his gratitude for and pride in the great honor. I am delighted to welcome you all. Those of you who heard my remarks at the State Department on the occasion of the cafeteria naming ceremony no doubt expect me to say something in a foreign language, probably about the fact that today is the Cinco de Mayo. I am loath to disappoint you. Nevertheless, you have to find your own tequila to celebrate the short-lived victory of an outnumbered Mexican army over the colonizing French. Today, we are gathered to celebrate the life and achievements of a native Virgin Islander who traveled with the Virgin Islands with it in his heart and soul everywhere he went. This commemorative street naming ceremony that most of us hope will inspire and encourage future generations of Virgin Islanders to rise in service to their people, their nation, and our planet. As we do, we must remember that neither my father, who we honor here today, nor any of us here assembled arrived at this point in our lives without support, guidance, and assistance of others. As you reflect upon this ceremony, I want you to cast your minds back to a time not that long ago and a place not that far from here when a little black boy greeted arriving visitors diving off of a small rowboat in the then clean waters of St. Thomas Harbor to retrieve for pocket money the coins tossed from arriving ships. Our father was that little black boy, and he remembered vividly and told us repeatedly about the competition for coins. That boy, who was to become my mother's husband and our father, could not have imagined the day when a road, even a piece of a road, to the modern gateway to and from St. Thomas would be named after him. Imagine the hope, the gratitude, and the pride he would have felt had he thought such an honor was even possible for the likes of him. I remember when the airport terminal here on St. Thomas was just a hangar. The runway was too short, and this bit of road didn't exist. The land that we're standing on used to be called by locals a mountain. You can see the remnants of this hill, but it used to be called a mountain. Progress is possible. But I think the boy that was our father, and then of all of the boys and girls growing up today who can't imagine the possibilities that they can achieve in service to the islands, the nation, or the globe. This small stretch of road could be for them and their best possible dreams of impossible futures, a launch pad for their hopes for better tomorrows when the gateway to and from the Virgin Islands is a spaceport. As I have said above, my father didn't succeed on his own. All along the way, he had the support of family, teachers, too numerous to mention, spiritual guides, mentors, critics, and in particular, the support, guidance, counsel, and contributions of his indefatigable wife and equal partner, our mother, Doris Todman. I'd like to take a moment to recognize her contribution. As we celebrate this honor in his name, we must also celebrate and honor those who helped along the way. None of us make it by ourselves, and all of us not only benefit from the support and guidance of others, we are also in a position to support, guide, counsel, and lift others. Those who stand on the shoulders of giants have an obligation to lift the next generation onto our shoulders. As a family, we are delighted and grateful for this high honor being bestowed upon our father. But I would not be my father's son if I did not note how far we have yet to go before we, as U.S. citizens resident in a territory of the United States, enjoy the full rights and privileges of citizens resident in the various states, given that even now we watch many of those hard-earned rights erode in the recent years. It is an urgent reminder that our progress isn't guaranteed, although possible, or even secure, unless we are constantly vigilant for signs of erosion and vigorous in defense of the progress made. The retrograde reactionary forces are ever active and aggressive in their efforts to retrench and reverse even the smallest progress made in becoming a more just, inclusive, and equal society. Even after the proven achievement in every field of endeavor by Virgin Islanders and others, a struggle must be waged for every step forward. It is exhausting, but necessary, especially in the face of the persistent hope that we will tire and surrender to the reactionary tide, whose only object is to sweep us from the scene. Just as generations did for our father, we need to inspire young people to dream the impossible and support them as they make the impossible real. Thank you to all who made this day possible, and bon courage to those of you destined to carry these efforts forward into the future. I guess in the end, I had to leave you with some foreign language. Thank you.
Well, it's the least you could do since you did not bring the tequila, right? Certainly, Ambassador Todman was a shining example of a husband, father, public servant, and indeed his legacy will continue to live on. Thank you so much for those members of the family here today, and especially his wife. As promised, and I always keep my promises, we are going to have an opportunity to hear once again from our St. John administrator, Mrs. Joan Sproul, and her beautiful voice. Everyone on the hilltop is just so happy today because they get to hear her voice.
Good morning again. So, wasn't sure what I was going to say, but here we go. You know, you guys can sway with me, okay? Let's sway. I've seen trees of green, red roses too. I've seen them blue for me and for you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I've seen clouds of white and skies of blue. I say backward, but you know what I'm singing? 'Cause I'm singing for you. And I think to myself, do you see how I did that? For a wonderful world. It's the colors of the rainbow, they're so pretty in the sky, and also on the faces of the people going by. I see friends shaking hands. Shayla, how do you do? You good? They're really saying, you say, I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than any of us will ever know. Nothing to myself, and you sing. You guys think you're gonna have me by myself singing? Not today. Ladies and gentlemen, on saxophone, give it up for your governor, Albert Bryan Jr. I'm just pulling everybody in the band. Give him a round of applause. It's the colors of the rainbow. They're so pretty in the sky, and also on the faces. So many people going by. I see friends shaking hands, boss. How do you do? They're really singing, you sing. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, you say? Oh yes, ooh, I think to myself. Let's sing. Hold the note. Thank you guys so much.
We just absolutely love her. We just do. We just do. Thank you so much. Next time we'll practice. We'll send the lyrics to everyone and have a quick practice before the program begins. So now I am so honored. Again, there are so many wonderful folks who joined us today. There we go. So many wonderful folks who joined us today. And at this time, I would like to recognize for remarks Mr. James Dandridge, who is a retired career senior foreign service officer with the rank of minister counselor. Mr. Dandridge is president of the Diplomatic and Consular Affairs, we keep saying affairs as officers, retired board of governors and trustees. Ladies and gentlemen, indeed an honor, Mr. Dandridge, for your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Solomon. Governor Brand, the government cabinet, dignitaries, Mrs. Doris Todman, the Todman family, and all of my friends here. What a wonderful opportunity. The last time I reached in my pocket to take out my rewritten 3 times notes, I came out with my auto rental contract. It was not very entertaining. Nevertheless, I will not treat you to the company to be unnamed contractual agreements when I arrived yesterday. Back to my second home, mi segunda tierra in for the Cinco de Mayo. This is my 3rd visit to St. Thomas, and it will not be my last. My wife, Margaret, sends her regards and her congratulations. She would have traveled with me, but she said, unless you can spend a week in St. Thomas, why should I go for 1 day? So I have a contractual arrangement to return to St. Thomas for at least 1 week. But what a glorious occasion this is, to join you in the celebration of one of America's finest diplomats and representatives of the United States of America. Ambassador Todman loved his country. And every act that he took in his professional life, in the military, in the diplomatic corps, and private corporate community, he did not miss an opportunity to celebrate and promote his country. But there was something else about Ambassador Todman. He adored his birthplace right here in the Virgin Islands. He adored his birthplace so much that he never changed his, quote, place of residence, unquote, during his representation of this fine country abroad. To him, this was a mark of honor and fidelity. Unto thine own self be true, thus thou canst be false to no other man. This was the essence of his desire to always make sure that everyone knew that he was from the Virgin Islands. When in the waning days of his health, his primary desire was to be taken back home, from whence this noble journey of supporting humanity, whatever the cause, wherever the challenge began. He's often referred to as an outstanding black. It was affectionately known as the pale male Yale crowd. He started his maturation right here in St. Thomas, where he learned how to read and write, right out of his kindergarten, where he graduated from Charlotte Amalia High School, second in his class, salutatorium. I was lucky to meet Ambassador Todman, and even more fortunate to share his friendship as our paths converged and ended up together in the last 20 years of his life in our post-active diplomatic careers. It all started when Ambassador Todman was whom we both had various degrees of contact in our earlier incarnations, me as a student at Howard University, where Dr. Bunch was still a tenured professor, and Ambassador Todman, who had a very early assignment as a junior foreign service officer in the trusteeship division in the United Nations Department of Trusteeship and Information from non-self-governing territories. Now, Ambassador Todman's singular suggestion of establishing timelines for specific courses of self-government, but it was Ambassador Todman's idea. Actually, we decided to put a plan. We did not want to do a series of conferences in bringing the legend of humanity human. So eventually, as a part of this program, Ambassador Todman said, you know what we need to do, Jim? After we, who was Kofi Annan at the time, and let him know this. The first successfully completed conflict resolution when equally capable of giving this speech, who's helped me in the preparation. And he turned catalog all of Ambassador Todman's papers. As one of our presidents said, something to the effect, we can. Yes, we can, right here. So my thanks to the Todman family for letting us share the legacy of a legend. My congratulations to the government of the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Thank you, Shayla, for the introduction. And thank you to the government of the Virgin Islands, to Governor Ryan, for hosting this gracious, this really tremendous event, and in particular to the Todman family, who I feel like have almost adopted me as one of their own. So, and I really want to particularly acknowledge Doris again, who is a co-star in this in many ways. And so for those who haven't seen the film, I and many of my colleagues at the State Department consider you to be the star of that tremendous film that Leola Calzolai Stewart, who's the spouse of a diplomat, created. So, so thank you to everyone who made today possible. My boss, the State Department's first standalone Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer, I think in many ways carrying forward the legacy of Ambassador Todman, Ambassador Gina Abercrombie Winstanley, wishes so much she could be here today, so she sends her warmest regards. My name is Miriam Saifi, and I'm a senior advisor on the ambassador's team of this new office that was just started a year ago to really carry forward these ideals of equity and justice that Ambassador Todman embodied throughout his career. So on behalf of the State Department, it is my honor. Today's naming of the airport after Todman, Ambassador Todman, is particularly poignant. The Virgin Islands, thank you. I'm short, so thank you for this adjustment. Today's naming of the airport after Ambassador Todman is particularly poignant because this is actually where he began his journey. After high school, he traveled to Puerto Rico for university. Later, he went to Japan to serve in the military during World War II, and that's where he discovered his love of languages. And it sort of birthed his interest in diplomacy, in addition to his mentor that Jim Dandridge mentioned, that opened his eyes to the world. So it's so important, this idea of mentorship. And I personally, even though I actually never met Ambassador Todman, consider him a mentor, and his whole family. So this road eventually brought him to our nation's oldest cabinet agency, the U.S. Department of State, where he became a 6-time ambassador, the second highest number of ambassadorial appointments in our nation's history of all time. He was also a pioneer. He was the first African American to serve as a
If you can get it to his shoulders, you'll press it.
Oh no, what
25-inch shoulders.
and this. No, yeah, I love it. This is my first time in the Virgin Islands, and I've fallen in love. So even though it's my first visit, I'll be coming back over and over again. I feel also adopted as a Virgin Islander. So to echo what Jim Dandridge said, which I feel so personally, he was exceptional not as a black diplomat. Yes, he was the first African American to serve as a career assistant secretary. Yes, to attain the rank of career ambassador, the first. But he was extraordinary in terms of our entire institution. He also, something else that was extraordinary about him was his courage, which is something I would say in an institution as old as the State Department tends to be pretty risk averse. Many of us were sort of hardwired to keep our heads down. Ambassador Todman was the first time in my institution's history I heard the story of his courage. And for many of you who might have seen the film or know his story, in 1957 when he was a student at the Foreign Service Institute, and he was just starting his career, just like I did 10 years ago, so a few decades after Ambassador Todman, he found he couldn't eat with his colleagues in the cafeteria, the dining facility across the street because of segregation laws in Virginia. So instead of keeping quiet, keeping his head down, those days he was one of the only diplomats of color, he spoke up. He said something. And his principled dissent, after a sustained effort, led to the eventual integration of our dining facilities that we just take for granted today. So in February of this year, we held a ceremony in Washington, D.C. Patricia came, Terry gave beautiful remarks. The Secretary of State gave remarks, and I know his speechwriters actually interviewed Doris and the family because there were so many stories. And we honored him. We have a plaque there, so whenever people walk, just like this road here and the sign that will show his name for this road, to honor his legacy. And I led this effort actually alongside 2 other women diplomats of color, Charlena Hussein Morgan and Yolanda Kearney. The interesting part about this is that the 3 of us actually never actually met Ambassador Todman in person. We called ourselves the Todman Trio. And I'll tell you, it was no easy effort, given the State Department and our bureaucracy, especially in a pandemic, to host a ceremony like this in person. We felt that it was important to have it be with others. And there's no ventilation. This is a pandemic, so we did it. We kind of channeled Todman's perseverance, the ambassador's perseverance to do this. And one thing that when we were designing the plaque, I was asking for input in what to say. How do you put in a short space the tremendous 4 decades of legacy, 9 administrations, and the thing he knew intuitively, and the reason why he pushed to desegregate the cafeteria as one of many moments in his career where he spoke up and was courageous in the face of injustice, is that he knew that our foreign policy, if he was treated like a second-class citizen at home, that our foreign policy would not only be less credible, it wouldn't be effective. It just wouldn't work. So to carry forward Ambassador Todman's legacy and the, quote, troublemakers, which is what he described himself as in a good way, who came before us, the Secretary of State, Secretary Blinken, established this department's first standalone Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer, my ambassador, and the office I work in, the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, to support her work to transform this institution into a more just and equitable place, one that Ambassador Todman envisioned and worked towards. So though we've made progress, and as Terry mentioned, we've got a ways to go, the road ahead, we're working to fix it. We have to. This is the time. So we're hard at work, in terms of our office, doing some of the structural reforms of collecting data. We need to know the problem in order to fix it, to benchmark, progress, inform policy. We're looking at accountability mechanisms. And the hardest part, I'll be honest, is changing the culture I talked about earlier, where we're sort of hardwired to keep our heads down. We have to have an institution where everybody speaks truth to power the way that Ambassador Todman did and embodied his career. So, in June of last year, the White House actually issued an executive order really focusing on this across the federal workforce, advancing diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. And as we begin to implement this plan, which is very ambitious, I'm reminded of something that Ambassador Todman's son, Terry, who's with us, shared during the cafeteria renaming ceremony. He actually reflected that Ambassador Todman would have found it surprising that he's being recognized in such a way for speaking truth to power, that he simply thought that was what he was being paid to do. So for me, I wonder, how can we normalize this culture, make it the norm, not the exception, right? We keep talking about that he was so exceptional. How can we normalize this culture, a culture that lifts others up, that treats everyone with respect and dignity, and that holds us accountable to live up to our founding principles of equity and justice for all, even and especially when our nation falls short. Before I knew of Ambassador Todman's story, I felt like an outsider in my institution. As a dark-skinned woman of color with parents originally from India, and I know there's Ambassador Todman's friends who are also here from India, my authenticity as an American was and continues to be called into question. Ambassador Todman was, like me, a diplomat of color. He hailed from this beautiful island, the U.S. Virgin Islands. He spoke English with an accent. And he also, like me, had to prove his Americanness and at times his belonging at the policy table. Despite the barriers he faced, Ambassador Todman delivered and eventually rose to the highest ranks of my institution. Thank you. It is my deepest honor to carry forward his legacy, to work in an office, this new office. It's a startup office with a huge, huge, ambitious goal, and it seeks to pave a smoother road so that future generations of American diplomats, all diplomats, diplomats of color, people with disabilities, across the board, everyone can face fewer obstacles so that we have a more equitable and more just institution for everyone. Sorry. And I hope that this will inspire future generations of Virgin Islanders, as they're traveling this road. Thank you so much. As they're traveling this road. to follow his path and to consider a career representing our nation. I know. Okay. So I'm going to borrow some of Terry's words. A lot of people helped contribute to this speech. As Terry mentioned, nobody does anything alone and without support. But he mentioned that his dad would say that no citizen, irrespective of their station, origin, or condition, should be precluded from service to their people or their country. Today's ceremony to name the airport road after Ambassador Todman and the State Department's cafeteria naming earlier this year are important because they reinsert diplomats of color into the history of American diplomacy. More often than not, the stories of diplomats of color, like Ambassador Todman and others from other underrepresented groups, they're rarely portrayed as protagonists in our nation's history. Rarely. They're usually side characters, and let alone heroes. As the first African-American presidential speechwriter, Terry Edmonds, lamented in an article I just read a couple weeks ago, he talked about the lack of diversity in the speechwriting field. He said, how many more generations of young African-American boys and girls would be privy only to the dust and not the shine of their ancestors? Today, we can admire the shine of our ancestors. Ambassador Todman paved the way for diplomats of color and was a pioneer in many ways, but it's also important to note, to echo what Jim Dandridge said, that he was one of the most extraordinary diplomats of all time. He achieved the highest heights despite the barriers he faced, despite Jim Crow, despite segregation, and all of the obstacles and indignities. He served with ethics and integrity. His moral compass was grounded in equity, justice, and opportunity for all, the founding ideals of our country, and that was the common thread throughout his career. And for this reason, he's an inspiration not only to diplomats of color, to all diplomats, but also to all Americans, to all Virgin Islanders. And again, it's a tremendous, tremendous privilege to be here. Thank you so much. And apologies for breaking down.
We love the sincere remarks, and we love the tears as well. What we don't love is the game that's playing. I don't know what game is going on. I hope they're winning. But you know what? The shine of our ancestors, I absolutely love that. Representation is so, so important. And indeed, Ambassador Todman was a legend, an icon, and his legacy will continue to live on for generations to come. I did promise another song, and we are going to have one final musical selection by our St. John administrator, Mrs. Jones Sproul.
Hey. That was a cricket match, by the way. I'm not sure. So, you, Jenny, giving me the side look. Usually for these programs, it's more subtle, it's quiet. But just reading through the program, hearing about him jumping off a boat to catch a coin, I did that, you know. Right on the dock, you know. My grandfather was a taxi man from Savannah. So I'm going to change it up a little bit, okay? Get you guys' energy up. Hit me, Richard. I have a personality, okay? Work with me. You know, and this goes back to the time, you know, the times when he was young. The time when you guys used to party, because I know I used to party. So don't act new about this song, okay? Because it's a big tune. And if you guys know this song, you know, you can help me as well. You can also do the steps, you know. Right now on the mic, we have our governor, known as Ike. Will be helping me with this song. I just picking on him, right? Well, we gonna do this song called Proud Mary. Don't worry, Deputy, I'm gonna keep it subtle. I'm gonna keep it subtle. Richard, just a little bit so I can feel it. Left a good job in the city, working for a man every night and day. But I never lost 1 minute of sleep. Well, I was worried about the way that things might have been. And my big wheel keep on turning. seen a lot of planes in Memphis, and I pumped a lot of tank down in New Orleans. But I never saw the good side of the city until I hitched a ride down the riverboat stream. My big wheels keep on turning. Clap with me. Proud Mary keep on burning. And we're rolling, rolling, yeah. Rolling on a river. And we're rolling, rolling, yeah. Rolling on a river. I'm gonna keep it cool. Sheila got it. And I left a good job in the city, and I'm working for a man every night and day. And I never lost one minute in the sleep. Well, I was worried about the way that things might have been. And my big wheel keep on turning. And with proud Mary keep on burning. And well, say, and well, yeah, yeah. Come on. Lift up, two. Come on. Well, I came a lot of places down in Memphis, and I pumped a lot of tank down in New Orleans. But I never saw the good side of the city till I hit a ride down the big wheel keep on turning. Proud Mary keep on burning. Rolling, sing. Rolling. Rolling on a river. Pull it up. Come on. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It was really nice. Good night.
So I'm sure that certainly was not what you expected, but that's the good thing about these events. You know, when we are celebrating the life of a legend, I mean, anything is possible. So thank you so much, St. John Administrator. Yeah, she has an official title. That is our St. John Administrator. Yeah, she's in charge. Mrs. Shakima Jones-Sproul. So ladies and gentlemen, as we get back to some formality, it is certainly my pleasure to introduce for remarks the Governor of the U.S. Virgin Islands, the Honorable Albert Bryan Jr.
Rolling. Yeah, I have to follow Shakima. Or me. Shakima and lunch, what a place to be between. Good morning, everybody. Certainly, good morning to Ms. Todman. Glad to have you here. Good morning, Bishop Seaton. All are distinguished. You know, after like the third thing, I'm like, Derek, what is taking so long to getting? I was telling somebody the other day, granted citizenship by the Congress, just like the rest of us. Just saying. To do that too. You're of East Indian descent. Well, today we adopt you, so you're West Indian descent now too. So you're East and West, you're covered. So yeah, having covered that business, I mean, he went up to the States, went to war as a person who came from a small community where everyone looked like him, you know, and he had to make his presence known. And I think sometimes we forget, like, what a cocoon, a nest of confidence the Virgin Islands is. When you're a child of color, as you know, right, impact. When you're raised in this, you know, I used to sit in elementary school, and when we read about the slaves and everything that was going on, I was like, but why didn't it just take over? I mean, and somebody had to explain to me that America doesn't look like the Virgin Islands, that there were actually more Caucasian people than they were black people. I mean, they talk about your environmentally biased, that you don't understand. This is what our concept of the world is here. The strength and confidence that Virgin Islanders leave here with go on and change the world. And here is a guy, and I love this picture here. You know one thing about Terence Todman, I always have to shift back to my local colloquialism. I didn't go to college, so I can speak properly, but you know one thing about my boy, he was sharp, eh? He was sharp. You know, I am so humbled to be up here because, I mean, growing up and saying, Thomas, he is like, this guy is a god. I mean, he's Ambassador Terence Todman. I mean, I was 68, 69, he got his first appointment. He was in India in the 50s, a black man from a small place in the Virgin Islands. I mean, imagine the impact and being able to do that and compete with other people, and with an accent. They've been telling me, so you don't even sound American. Neither do I. But it is American because this is what America sounds like. It sounds like Ambassador Todman, like Miss Safi, like the governor, like Avery, like Derek. That's what America sounds like. Lots of different voices and tones all imposed. And you know, these are the image that I grew up with. I picked this up to show you. Right here, he's with our delegate, Ron DeLugo. Jimmy, was Ron DeLugo our first delegate to Congress? Yeah. He was the first. We put him, so I had lots of stuff to tell you today. We honored him, his memorial, on Monday. And it was something that bothered me because he died last year, and it was during COVID, and we couldn't do anything. And then when we had the memorial service, like not that many people showed up. And I have buried a lot of Virgin Islanders in my 3 years of governor. And I don't know whether we're like forgetting or we're losing tradition. It's very gory, but funerals is one thing that we always go to. And COVID has changed that a little bit because we put all kinds of restrictions on it. So people stopped going to funerals. In my generation, you know, we always too busy. In the next generation, too distracted. But we're losing our people. But more importantly, we're losing our culture. And we understand, I mean, we have to make our young people understand that the tremendous strides that people have made in order for us to be here. It's like I had one of my nephews campaigning with me, and he was telling me about, you know, the Civil War and Abraham Lincoln and how he freed them. And I was like, nah, he freed them. He freed them, not we. And he was like, what do you mean, Uncle Albert? And I was like, no, we take our freedom. We take ours own. Nobody give we. That's important. It's important because you got to know your history. You think if these young people knew what people went through for them to get free education, and we take it for granted every day. I mean, people like, you know, I understood this at a very early age when I would be in the room as the only black person in the Virgin Islands and listening to the conversation and what was being said, and thought my role was not only to say something, but to be the epitome of the black young Virgin Islander that they couldn't imagine. And they were always shocked by my behavior because they couldn't believe that I went to school here or that I lived here all my life. You know, every year we always say, you know, we have a brain drain. We need to keep more students home. Terence Todman is proof that some of the students need to go away too, because they need to sit in those rooms. I mean, you could never, ever measure the impact of a man like this and the rooms that he has been in and the relationships that he has made, that he's been able to say, hey, you know, what about St. Thomas? What about St. Croix? About the times when he would say, hey, what about people of color? All those times when he had to give of himself and maybe bite his tongue a couple of times in order to stay in that room. That's what we have to recognize, the self-sacrifice of a man who left off this airport and went away from a place he obviously loved. He always made sure, that's what he said, right? His resident was the Virgin Islands. That was his resident. And it must have pained him to go all over the world doing it, as much as he enjoyed his job, he came back home when he was done. That's a sacrifice of great measure, and what we should remember. And we can't afford for our young people to miss out on that, to miss out on. Is being a Virgin Islander is more than walking up and putting your fist like this. It's about representing a culture and a class and a standard of people who are of color and have accomplished greatness. I think it is fitting that his road name and his sign is at the top of this roadway, because it's a constant reminder that there's a world beyond. As you look out on that airport, you could see to an infinity that as you pass here and you go on the airport, that Terence Todman wanted to aspire to greatness, not locally, not nationally, but globally. And he did it as a Virgin Islander who used to jump off a boat for quad. And that in that, he still found his home here. That it's okay to leave and succeed. But it's more important to remember that you must represent as a Virgin Islander wherever you go properly. And you must always mentor, right? Mentor and bring people along. And as we do these things, and I see people there, I know you guys are a very young crowd, but we need to bring the grandchildren and the aunties and the sons and daughters sometime and sit them down in the crowd so they could hear what's going on. Get them a little distracted from that phone that they're always attached to. So today, like I said, I'm humble to preside as governor over Ambassador Todman's street naming and remembrance of him as a person. And I don't call out another person here, and I'm going to blame it all on him too. Senator Jackson should have never leave the legislature. It's time to register again. Because, I mean, I don't know how we're going to do it, Senator, but we got to get a Virgin Islands Museum and get these people remembered so that all Virgin Islanders, you know, are revered. We got to get it done. I don't know how, but we got to get it done. So, Ms. Todman, thank you. Children, family, thank you for sharing with him with us. This is but a small token of our appreciation of him as a global impact leader and a Virgin Islander that we'll forever be proud of. Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Ooh, thank you. I wasn't going to sing. Thank you so much, Governor, for those remarks. Indeed, Virgin Islands pride, the strength and confidence of Virgin Islanders. And that is something that I hold so near and dear to me. Ladies and gentlemen, we certainly want to thank you for joining us here today. Such a grand celebration for a giant of a man. As we close out today's program, I would ask if you're able to please stand for the benediction by Bishop Seaton.
Let us pray. May the Lord bless us and keep us. May the Lord cause his face to shine upon us and be gracious unto us. May the Lord lift up the light of his countenance and give us his peace, now and forevermore. Amen. The Lord be with you.
So now one of the most exciting parts of today's program, where we're actually going to get to see this costly but so fitting sign for Ambassador Todman. And before we even, as you make your way over, and Governor and Commissioner and our platform guests, you can, Ms. Williams would escort you to the sign so that we can unveil it. I would like to just take a moment to acknowledge all the individuals who helped to make today possible. Of course, first and foremost, I would like to thank Miss Eugenie Williams, who is always going above and beyond for our events. We also have Chartboard, the Department of Public Works, the Department of Property and Procurement, Print Shop Division, Mr. Felipe Ayala, the Office of the Governor, Rock City Entertainment, Shakima Jones-Sprout, our songstress today who just had us in such a wonderful mood, the Virgin Islands Police Department, and the Virgin Islands Port Authority. So thank you so much, ladies, once again. We are now going to take this moment to reveal the sign. And once everyone is in place, Governor, I will do a countdown. So we'll make sure that we have the family and everyone in place. And let me know when you're ready for the countdown, Governor. Wait, 10, 9, 8. Okay, the family, yes, family, please, please, please get closer to the sign. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There we have it, the beautiful sign dedicated to Ambassador Terence A. Todman. His road naming ceremony, ladies and gentlemen, is official. And we thank you so much for joining us here today. Make sure that you get your photo taken with the sign. Truly a beautiful sight to see for a deserving, more than deserving, representative and individual to the entire world. So thank you so much for joining us today. That concludes today's program.